Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board this confessional flight. We do hope you enjoy your journey.
Step on board and prepare for a relaxing experience.
I said, "Thank you for that, sir," and there's a rubber glove with your name on it waiting for you at customs.
Learn the real meaning of in-flight entertainment.
I should imagine pilots see stewardesses as very easy pickings. Yes, they are most of the time.
And remember, you're in the safest hands.
Turned the automatic pilot off, and for the next 15 minutes I was flying it, doing a few bends over Russia. Nobody was none the wiser, just tipping it left and right.
Strap in and hear former stewards confess their sins. Air travel, mile-high glamour and the promise of exotic destinations. And the air steward is on hand to cater for your every whim. Service with a smile, or not.
When I first started flying, they said to me that you learn to have a healthy dislike for passengers, and it turned into a very unhealthy dislike for them.
You go into an airport, you start to itch. It's just keep them away from me. When you're boarding, it's the enemy are approaching, and that is true.
You may think you're a very important passenger, but to me, you're just self-loading freight.
In a 20-year career, a steward will meet and greet over 1 million people. Confessions has discovered the secret tactics cabin crew use to control their human cargo.
Spaced out flight, you've only got 5 passengers in 40 seats, and they're all scattered all over the cabin. So to get them together, what we do is you can actually cancel their television screen and the video entertainment that they're watching from the computer at the front of the plane. So the passenger sat in 1C and you want to move him, 1C, you turn it off. And he'll press his call bell, he'll go over and say, "Oh, my screen's not working." "Yeah, so there's something wrong with the screen, but the screen here is working." And what you do is you gradually just bunch them all together, moving them from seats by turning their video monitors off until you get them into a little workable environment where they're all sat together.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking.
And when you've got the passengers in the right place, you need to keep them there.
If it's passengers wanting to get up all the time and going to the toilet, you just tell the captain to turn the seatbelt signs on because you're expecting turbulence, and that can last for hours.
Some stewards' methods are less subtle than others.
If you had a very naughty passenger, and it would have to be a very, very naughty passenger, would have a word with the flight deck to create a little bit of turbulence. So, Mr. Passenger, go to the toilet, you have a word with the captain and say, "Oh, bit of turbulence if you please." And they can, I believe, waggle the debris, and then it swings the tail, and then you just hear a smack as he falls off the toilet. But of course, I've never heard of that. I've never seen it, but I'm sure there are some people that do that.
But the greatest adversary facing a steward is small and utterly deadly.
Imagine what it's like if you're on a charter flight to Mallorca on the busiest Saturday of the year. It's going to be like the worst children's party you've ever been to, and your job is to provide the entertainment and then clean up afterwards.
Babies are a real pain. They get on everybody's nerves, but especially the cabin crew, because we're the ones who've got to put up with it, and the complaining passengers about the whinging mother and all that sort of paraphernalia. So I find, shouldn't really tell you this, but a few drops of gin in the milk does wonders, knocks the child out for the rest of the sector. Everybody's happy, especially the cabin crew.
One little boy kept running in my galley one day, in and out, can I have this, can I have that, making a complete mess. And then he went into the toilet. So I thought, right, now I've got him. And on the outside of the toilet, you can lock the door from the outside. So each time he unlocked the door to come out, I locked it back up again. "Oh, you little budder." And that really got him, but he started to cry, so I had to let him go back to his parents in the end. But it taught him a lesson.
Screaming children test cabin crew's ingenuity to the limits. But 5 miles up, there are still more difficult passengers to deal with. An estimated 22 people will die of natural causes on planes arriving in Britain this year. And once again, it's down to the steward to look after them.
An aircraft, won't be brought into land as an emergency if they're already dead. If they're still ill, they will, but if they're dead, you might as well get to your destination. So the basis of that is to try and keep the dead person from the view or the knowledge of the other passengers.
You'd pop an oxygen mask over them just so that it maintains their dignity, although unfortunately they don't know anything about it. I think, it's nice to be respectful to them. Pop a blanket over them so they look all snuggly and cosy and whatever, and I would just chat to them really. I mean, I can chat about all sorts of rubbish. I don't know, I'd say, oh, isn't it lovely outside? Or look, we're nearly landing now, and, hang on in there. So that passengers would think, yes, he's okay, he's recovered, he's still going.
Unfortunately, you do have to secure a body for landing, because you can't have it flopping off down the aisle when you're slamming the brakes on. And I know of an instance where we had to put the body in the toilet because it was the only place that had a door to keep the body in place. And it's not very nice for somebody else to have to sit and hold on to a dead person so they don't slide off their chair.
Aeroplanes like to boast of the highest standards on board. They'd like you to think they're smart, efficient, and clean.
Hygiene? What's hygiene on an aircraft? Oh, hygiene! Oh, hygiene. Yes.
Aircraft and hygiene, do we use them in the same sentence?
You wouldn't eat if you knew the dirty conditions that the food's being served in.
You would cook all the meals in ovens. It was very difficult to tell if they were ready. One would take the foil off, stick your finger in it, see if it was defrosted and hot, and put the foil back on. If I see the foil's been tampered with, I won't eat it.
You would take the coffee pots into the toilets, swill it down into the toilet, and 300 passengers might have been in that toilet during the flight. Can you imagine what stuff is in there?
Passengers are at the mercy of the cabin crew, and any misbehaviour can have dire consequences. A steward's spite is unsurpassed. Beware vengeance in the skies.
Your valuables become less valuable to me the worse you behave.
There was one time where this woman came on board and she came on with this massive bag. It was a big dustbin bag full of Easter eggs. She sat there with them on her lap. I explained to her that they have to go underneath, it's too big to have on the plane, and she went absolutely mad. She was swearing at me, causing a scene, screaming in fact, and it was quite bad. And I informed her that I would have to tell the purser and have her removed from the plane if she didn't give me this bag, and she would be offloaded. And finally she agreed, and I said to her they would be safe in my hands, trust me. As I took them down the steps and I put them in the forward hold, I kind of slipped and made the bag small by smashing it around a bit. I felt guilty for about 3 minutes and then went back onto the board on the plane.
If they're asleep in their seat, I'd walk past and give their seat a shake to wake them up.
Not bothered to do tea and coffee when they're all gasping for a drink.
Drop the ice down your underwear.
Rub them round a bit.
It has been known that the tea bags get a slightly blue tinge.
With swizzle sticks, put them in your belly button.
Swill them round in your mouth.
Spilling hot drinks.
Hot towels.
Tomato juice is always a good one.
Whoops!
Gotcha.
They deserve to get a little bit of special treatment, I used to call it.
But the steward's favourite means of revenge is both discreet and deadly.
One of the best stories I can remember is a passenger in club. And he was being particularly obnoxious. He thought he'd bought the airline, that sort of. So we told the purser about this passenger. She says, right, I'll go and sort him out. So we watch her go down and she starts to speak to the chap in seat C, opposite this chap we've complained about. She comes back in the galley and she says, right, all sorted, all done, dealt with. No, you've spoken to the wrong person. She said, no, you were complaining about the chap in seat D. Yes. Well, why were you speaking to the chap in seat D, in seat C? She said, well, whilst I was speaking to the chap in seat C, I was farting in D's face.
When it comes to steward's special treatment, a badly behaved star will get that little bit extra.
German supermodel was sat in 3A and she was particularly aggressive and not friendly at all to the crew. And so a decision was taken that a bogey should be placed in her scone. And I happened to have one. So it was removed, placed in the scone. and we all sat from the galley watching her munch on her scone for the next 15 minutes, much to the hilarity of all the crew.
Passengers, be warned. The vengeful steward will use anything to get even. Take a friend in customs and add a rubber glove.
We're coming in for a landing, and there were two skinhead guys sitting on the centre aisle holding hands, and I thought nothing of it, but it was across the aisle. And as I was coming up, clearing the rubbish, these guys looked up at me and said, "Recognise this, you faggot," and I was absolutely horrified that I'd been called this, as I hadn't warranted it at all. I felt that as other male cabin crew, you know, everyone suspects or expects them to be gay, but they're not. So I said, "Thank you for that, sir, and there's a rubber glove with your name on it waiting for you at customs." His face dropped, he was absolutely horrified, and I was so happy that I'd got the response that I'd wanted, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to shock him and I wanted to worry him, because he had no right to speak to me the way he did. And as the ground crew were out there in dispatch, I gave him a wink and pointed to the sky, and he got stopped at customs.
Routine, it's a killer, and cabin crew suffer boredom more than most. Every year, a charter steward serves up 90,000 meals, 300,000 drinks, and smiles at 100,000 disinterested passengers.
Well, it becomes very, very tedious saying goodbye to over 300 people. Goodbye, sir. Goodbye, sir. Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye, 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 goodbye. And you think, oh, how many more times have I got to say this?
You don't even look at them. So if you've got foreign people on board who don't really know what you're saying, but as long as you smile sweetly and bow sweetly as you say it, you can say, "Apple pie, apple pie." "Pork pie, yes, pork pie, sir. Thank you very much. Pork pie."
"Thank you very much. Apple pie," and see how many people notice. And some do actually look at you, did I hear that? But then they'd think, oh no, that dear little innocent girl, she wouldn't say anything so rude.
All the advertising that airlines do kind of create the impression that all the cabin crew's attention is focused on you, the passenger, and they are just there to make sure that you have a good, comfortable time. That's complete tosh, of course. They're mostly there to try and have the best time that they possibly can at 30,000 feet while crammed into a small metal tube.
One of the things that we do with trainees is change the whistle on the piece of string on the life jacket for a tampon and stick it back in its little pouch on life jacket. So when the trainee is putting on the life jacket and the coming to do the demonstration, and the voiceover is saying, "And the right hand side of your life jacket is a whistle like so," and the trainee pulls it out and looks in absolute horror at this tampon on the end of the string instead of the whistle. And then it gets worse because they're in front of 400 passengers, and the voiceover says, "And blow like this," and the trainee then has to put it in his or her mouth and blow, then put it back in a little pouch. Naughty.
One particular favourite of many cabin crew that I've flown with is
Morn horn,
which is when we're doing a long flight, we are waiting for the passengers to go off to sleep and we dim the cabin lights, and that's when we get really bored. So one of us will go on the flight deck and ask the captain to turn the heat up. We leave it about 10-15 minutes, and then things start to grow in the trouser department.
This sounds really rude, but men sometimes wake up a little bit eager, don't they? So what we used to do is go down the aisles of an aircraft, one trolley dolly on one side, another trolley dolly on the other, and see how many men with morn horn they could find.
On one particular flight I counted 14, and we'll get down to the end,
and then you'd come back and compare numbers.
And go back and recheck, and whoever finds the largest or the smallest one offers them either a blanket or a cocktail napkin to keep them warm.
But a steward's favourite form of in-flight entertainment needs neither props nor passengers.
If you're cabin crew, you've really got to make your own entertainment. And with a lot of relatively attractive looking people that you're working with, it's not surprising that sometimes thoughts turn to a romance or a quick one in the loos.
I should imagine pilots see stewardesses as very easy pickings. Yes, they are most of the time. But then who wouldn't? Nice looking young man in a suit flying a plane? Bit of a turn on.
Everyone tries to do it. Passengers try to pull each other, crew try to pull each other, and passengers try and pull crew, and crew try and pull passengers.
Me and one of the girls on the crew, on our break, officially signed the Mile High Club for about 5 minutes.
Confessions has discovered that one of the most popular forms of entertainment is incredibly dangerous: flying the plane.
The pilots earn their money during takeoff and during landing. The rest of the time it's actually pretty dull. So if a new recruit comes into the cockpit and wants to sit down and find out how this works, and go that way, go up and down, of course they're going to perhaps do that.
At the time I was taking my private pilot's licence, so the captain suggested it might be fun if I had a go at flying a 737, which is very different from flying a small light aircraft. I thought it would be good. So they took it off automatic pilot and I flew it for a little while. But I had great difficulty and I couldn't keep a straight line and I was up and down. And unfortunately, we were over France at the time and French air traffic control came on the radio and asked why we weren't flying in a straight line, which was rather embarrassing. So I had to come off the controls and they made some excuse, which obviously be very careful what goes on the voice box as well in the flight deck. And that was my experience of flying a 737.
One of the first officers asked if I'd like to fly the plane. So I jumped in the captain's seat, of course, he's on his brake, on the visor, got hold of the joystick, turned the automatic pilot off, and for the next 15 minutes I was flying it, doing a few bends over Russia. Nobody was on the visor.
The first officer said, "Take the captain's seat, let's have a flying lesson." I said, "Yeah, great." I was really interested. I could tell the speed of the plane, the height of the plane, the direction of the plane. The INS was all logged in so that there was no real chance of us crashing. We were doing very well until the captain came back and he didn't see the funny side.
Of the cabin crew Confessions has interviewed, a quarter claim to have flown the plane.
It never occurred to me that I'd put anybody in danger. Looking back on it, I think I was probably quite competent in what I was doing, if not qualified.
Flying is the safest form of travel. The odds of being in a plane crash are 1 in 10 million. But occasionally, emergencies arise. And it's here that stewards with their training and courage come into their own.
I was on a flight once back from New York. We were about 3 or 4 hours into the flight, so we were mid-Atlantic, 40,000 feet, and we heard a very loud grumbling noise.
We heard a loud bang. The aircraft sort of went over to the left. The flight deck door flung open and you could see suddenly all hands at the pump and you're like, okay, I know something's occurring.
Pilot sitting shaking at the controls, green with worry.
He told me we had an engine failure, possibly shutting down the second engine, that we were diverting and we possibly wouldn't make it to the runway.
Your initial reaction as a human being is, my God, we lost an engine, we're all going to die kind of thing, but you know, your professional training takes over.
In an emergency, a steward must inform the passengers of the situation, and people react in surprising ways.
This passenger said, "Excuse me, will I be getting more tea?" And I thought, oh dear, no madam, don't you realise we've got a bit of a situation occurring here. Another lady actually commented how inconvenient it was to be diverting to another airport because she was actually having people meeting her at her destination. And I said, well madam, I do sympathise, but personally I'd rather get on the ground in one piece. You don't have time to answer silly questions like that.
And we made a successful emergency landing with only 3 engines, with fire engines zooming down the runway after us. I mean, it was an incredible experience, but not one that you'd really choose to repeat.
Stewards learn to deal with technical emergencies, but few have to cope with taking off in a war zone.
I was preparing a plane for passengers out of Beirut. There was an almighty explosion next to the plane. I was horrified. I looked out of the window. I couldn't believe what was happening. The captain screamed, "Everybody off the plane now! They're bombing the aircraft." I got off the plane. Then the captain said, "Look, we've got to get out of here. They're bombing the aircraft. The Beirut's closed. I've got to get out."
The passengers were waiting in the terminal, unaware of the drama outside.
We had to board the passengers in the dark. There was no radio contact with the tower, so that the guerrillas wouldn't know what was happening. The passengers knew nothing. We just said there was a technical fault with the lights on the plane. They sat down, they were completely oblivious. We managed to take off. I have never been so terrified in all my life.
This is how stewards train for emergency exits, guiding passengers from the plane. But in reality, would the passengers come first?
The big joke is, if you did have to evacuate the aircraft downslide, is you're taught in training school, you stand at the door and you get everybody out, and but the joke is, oh, this is the how to do it, follow me, and you come off first. But that wouldn't happen in real life, I hope.
If push came to shove and there's a real life death emergency, I think I would do as much as I could, but at the end of the day, you'd look after number one.
If there was a crash, the passengers would be off first, and then we would be last, and it would happen. It would happen. That was awful. Sorry, I know I'd be first. I'm only joking.